respected? There's an answer. Erdogan. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But we have an obligation, do we not, to behave responsibly?
Yes.
And you're saying that the responsible thing is to simply not get involved?
There may come a time when it would make sense for the West to become involved, despite its horrendous record of atrocities and crimes in that region too, going way back. But the question is, has that time come? There are others who have a much better status and may be able to do things that would lead to some sort of reconciliation or at least mediation. I mean, it's very possible that Libya is going to break up into two states.
Sure. We know, because we've seen what you've had to say on the subject, how you regard Bush and Blair's record in the Middle East. Do you think Obama's no better?
In many ways, he's worse.
Why?
I've been writing about it. I started writing about it before the election.
Why is he worse?
Well, should we go through the details?
Please.
In the case of Afghanistan, he's sharply escalated the war. This is threatening a breakup of Pakistan, which could be a catastrophe for the West. In fact, there's quite an important article that just came out by Anatol Yevin, who knows Pakistan very well, whose his conclusion is that British and American soldiers are dying in Afghanistan to make life more dangerous for Britain and the United States, namely because of the impact on potential breakup of Pakistan, which has both a huge number of nuclear weapons and a radical Islamic development, both of them supported by the West, both, and continue to be. Obama is continuing to carry out actions which are threatening this. Let's go to, I've already talked about his attitude toward Egypt, the usual one, follow the usual game plan, which I mentioned. Let's take Israel-Palestine. I mean, his position is shocking. He's refused to do. I mean, there was just a UN Security Council resolution a few weeks ago, in which calling on an ending of settlement expansion, and declaring the settlements illegal, which is not even controversial. Obama vetoed it. Alone, a General Assembly resolution shortly before was similar. The United States and Israel and a couple of Pacific Islands opposed it. You know, and this is the record all the way through.
You famously said that every American president since the Second World War would fail in the judgment as applied at Nuremberg, and therefore effectively should be hanged. You say the same applies to...
I didn't say not everybody was hanged at Nuremberg. I said if
we
believed
not everyone was hanged. I agree.
I said if we believed in the Nuremberg principles,
yes.
Every American president would be subject to them. What the decision would be, we'd have to check. Notice that this is the Nuremberg principles, not the trials.
But Obama would fare no better were those principles applied to him.
No, he's carrying out a major war in Afghanistan. He's supporting. He's directly involved in aggressive and criminal actions carried out by Israel, for example. He's only been in office for 2 years, so he hasn't a chance to invade anyone yet. But his record is quite consistent with what's happened before.
What about the methodology that's talked about in these popular movements in the Arab world, where it is said that it is Western technology, Facebook, Twitter, famously, the internet, and all the rest of it, that has enabled people to express dissent, and thereby, in the case of Egypt, to unseat one leader, you say to be replaced by another, who may be equally congenial to the West. We don't know.
Look, I'm perfectly in favor of the technology that was developed, actually a lot of it at my own institution under Pentagon funding. Yeah, nothing wrong with the technology. I use a computer. I use the internet.
Do you not find that there is something in the way that people behave, the behavior that is enabled by this technology, that is itself rather affirming of the principles you believe in?
Technology is quite neutral. I mean, a hammer doesn't care whether it's used to build a house or to bash in the head of a prisoner. And the same is true of technology.
The enablement of the dissemination of information, the dissemination of shared belief, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Of course. That's why I said I think the Internet's a fine thing. I think the Pentagon did a great job in funding the development of the Internet for decades.
Doesn't that reflect rather well on Western democracies?
Well, if you think the Pentagon is a great exponent of Western democracy, yes. In fact, the original intent of the Internet was, in fact, to facilitate communication. Yeah. The Internet's an interesting case. While it's basically mostly funded by the Pentagon. In fact, it was the ARPANET, the Army Net, was the first one actually developed where I work. As long as after the Pentagon then handed it over to the National Science Foundation. During that period, about 30 years, the Internet was quite free. It was commercialized under methods not yet really understood in the mid-90s. Since then, there have been many significant efforts to try to constrain and control it. And right now, the question of Internet freedom is a very live issue in the United States and elsewhere. Will it be kept free and open as it was when it was in the state system?
But it has enabled these people to mobilize, and that's been a good thing, hasn't it?
Yes, it's enabled them in Wisconsin, too. In fact, I'm involved in all kinds of activism all the time. It almost always takes place over the Internet. The Internet also gives access to lots of information that was otherwise unavailable. I mean, the Internet has a downside, too. It can be used for surveillance, can be used for control, it can be used for propaganda. There is a serious question about whether the providers, there's not many of them, are now in a position to use the Internet to direct people to what they want, not what the people want. That's a serious issue. It's getting even more serious with new mergers like Comcast and NBC. So the Internet in itself is, in principle, a fine development. There's nothing wrong with it. So are trains, let's say. So is the telephone. So is the printing press. All of these are very fine developments in principle. They can be used for liberatory ends. They can be used to control and coerce and destroy. And they're used for all of those ends.
Can I finish with a personal question? You're how old now?
82.
Why haven't you mellowed?
Because I look at the world, and there's things happening in the world which should lead anyone to become indignant, outraged, active, and simply engaged. I mean, look, we're in a position right now where there are, among the many threats we face, which go on all the time, there are two which literally threaten species survival. That's serious, and they're both being escalated. One is the threat of nuclear war, which is quite serious and escalating, and the second is the threat of environmental disaster, which is moving in extremely ominous directions. Take a look at the new Congress, for example. Just about every new congressional representative who came in last November is a climate denier. In fact, Congress has already moved to ban funding for the most mild environmental efforts. And furthermore, unfortunately, many of these people are true believers. So the head of one of the congressional subcommittees, a new Republican, explained that global warming can't be a problem because God promised Noah that there wouldn't be another flood. Others are just supported by...
But why do you care about stupid people?
Stupid people. These people have power, and they're carrying out actions. They are carrying out the actions which are defunding possible efforts to do something about these crimes. Furthermore, they're backed by major concentrations of power. The major business lobbies, for example, have announced that they're funding big propaganda campaigns to convince people that this doesn't matter. These are serious issues. Incidentally, if we want to look at stupid people, we find them all over the place. For example, we happen to be right in the middle of a huge financial crisis. People have noticed. And you trace that back. A lot of it comes from a fanatic religious belief in what's called the efficient market hypothesis. That's pure fanaticism. Dominated the economics profession, dominated the Federal Reserve. One consequence was that when an $8 trillion housing bubble developed, totally unrelated to any fundamentals, completely off the 100-year history of housing prices, the profession and the Fed, the central bank, said it's not necessary to pay attention because of efficient markets. I mean, is that very different from God promised Noah?
That's great. Thank you very much.